Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another wonderful episode of Pyreside Chat, the show where we find out a little more about the people that make this awesome game Immortal so very possible. My name is Kwame Mensa, also known as Tempo, and I'm joined uh, by Big Jon, as usual, Kip on the production, and the legendary Dr. Boson, our creative lead, Mr. Donavon Bailey. What is going on, man? How you doing?
I am doing pretty good. How are you?
Uh, I'm doing pretty good. A lot better now that we're doing a Pyreside Chat with in my personal opinion, one of the most creative leaders in the company.
Thank you.
So yeah, just wondering just how are you feeling today and how have you been lately?
Been
General
pretty
demeanor.
good. Slept 12 hours a couple days ago. It's pretty. It's
That's
pretty
good.
nice.
That might be the amount of sleep I got all week. To be
Oh.
honest, no, I don't think it was that. No, not that bad. But yeah, guys, this is Donovan Bailey. You might know him as our creative lead, but he's also very active. Bit of master of lore as well, and also very interesting individual who is one of the more recent pickups from SunSpear Games. So I can't say welcome because I think you came before me, but I'm still gonna welcome you because you know I absolutely respect and adore you, my friend. I do, and I know a
Thank you
lot of
very
people in
much.
the community do as well. So today we're going to learn a little bit more about him. But before we get into that, there is a giveaway, right? There are going to be 5 immortal keys that we would like to give to y'all in the Twitch chat. So with the command, I think is going to be hit. Yeah, it should be there in a bit. Raffle, exclamation raffle. If you ever you do get confused as to how to join, type in exclamation raffle in Twitch chat and you will be automatically entered to get that key. So yeah, with that out of the way, let's get to what we're all here for, and that is my friend, Mr. Donovan. So hey man, you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, like where you're from originally or growing up?
Yeah. So, many moons ago, in '95, I got spat out in Texas, uh, and yeah, I grew up military kids. We kind of bounced around a couple of states, but most of my time was somewhere in the southeast side of Texas. Houston. Spent a few years in Corpus Christi, which is a place that exists, and did university down at Texas A&M, and yeah, basically the first uh, about 20-ish years, uh, interspersed with a couple of like moves out of state, were in the old Lone Star State. Um,
Oh
and
yeah.
well, now I'm here in Oregon, but I do miss you know HEB, whatever. I want to go back.
Oh yeah. Is it like just the familiarity, or the food maybe perhaps, or just
It's mostly
the
food.
people? Yeah.
The uh, there's a lot of it is like stuff that I kind of got used to, and just like finding more and more things that I thought were more like widespread and aren't. A couple of them are like they're just like Texas staples. I knew I was going to be losing them, but like I found out like a week ago that Luby's is only it's a Texas place, and they only
Okay.
have locations in Texas. And I know none of you guys know what it is because I'm from
Did
Texas,
the
but
face.
I thought everybody knew that. Whereas I
So
get up
what
to it,
what
and I'm
kind
like,
of
wait a
food?
second, haven't had Luby's in forever. Do they have a
Oh
what?
no. And then it slowly dawned upon him. Oh yeah, there's a couple things like that on the East Coast that I thought existed everywhere too. And then whenever we would do like events or going to any live traveling, live events, I'd be like, yeah, dude, let's go, or someone would say like, oh, let's go to In and Out. And I'm like, the heck is that, right? So it's like a West Coast thing that we don't have. So I don't know. So what kind of food does Luby serve? Like what kind of
Oh, it's like a cafeteria style, home, like the home cook kind of stuff. It's like mac and cheese and like fish, and it's not like a special place. It's just a place that I like. Oh, I haven't been there in a while, kind of thing.
Yeah, like grew up with, and
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
all right. You could like if I were to come down to that area, like we would eat there for sure, right? Like that would be one of the
I,
things, one of the places we would.
it would be lower on the list. There's some great
Oh,
places in Texas.
I don't know if it had a special place in your heart where it's like you just have to.
It's not that special. It's just like I just took it for granted, you know.
I feel you on that. Oh, cool. Well, I did kind of want to. That's awesome, by the way. Um, even ask you like, what is your favorite food? Random.
Oh boy, favorite food. So, fishtail that into a story. A while ago, a cousin of mine, cousin met her now husband. Right, he kind of grew up in a different a different financial situation. When he came into the family, my family is like very big Latino welcoming kind of a thing. So the one of the things that he ended up saying is like a long time ago when people like asked me what my favorite restaurant was, I would just be like there's just like the one. But now it's like man, it's like
Depends on the day of the week, huh?
it depends. Well, it depends on the kind of food, like these different places do different things soup like differently, and they're all really good. It's hard to pick one
Ah,
favorite restaurant when there's like, what's your favorite sushi place? What's your favorite steak place? What's your favorite bird? Like,
uh-huh.
um,
This is one for every, yeah. Okay,
I
okay.
if I had to pick one, I'd probably say Italian because that's type of an old easy fallback. But like sushi's great, steak's great.
Oh yeah. So you're like, pretty diverse palate though, right? You're not just like not chicken nuggets, fries, man, and
When I say Italian, I mean exclusively chicken Alfredo. No,
yeah. Awesome, awesome. All right, well, we can just talk about at least, as far as your history. You told me you have a bit of history with technical writing, right? That's like your main
yeah.
bread and butter, eh?
So there's a it's difficult to get into this without getting into the long journey into SunSpear. So let's take you on it. Let's take you all on a
Sure.
journey.
All right.
So long time ago, right, 2008. Some dude I knew from school. I was hanging out at his house. And he's like, hey, "I'm gonna play a game," and he loaded up Brood War and played the map where Kerrigan betrays everybody. Spoiler alert for a like 30-year-old game, by the way.
I gotta shut the stream off. Guys, she's nah, go ahead.
And I'm like, I'm watching him play, and I'm like, what is this? Is super interesting. Um, Around that time, I was starting to really dig into just ideas for like what just like board games and stuff. I've still got a notebook somewhere with like the first like game that I designed, which was
Really?
poo poo terrible. But I know for a fact that that notebook in a box somewhere, and I really want to open it up and see how bad it was.
Now, was
Um,
it poo poo parable like poo poo platter or like?
it's pretty bad.
All right.
But like, it was
Let me
like
hear it.
it was basically like doing RTS stuff where it was like, okay, we're gonna have like these two big armies or whatever, and I didn't have any pieces to represent them, so I'm like, okay, I have a huge box of dominoes. So the 1 and 7 combination is this piece, and the 5 and 3 combination is just had this
Yeah.
huge fucking. I didn't know how to use spreadsheets, so I just like, wrote all this stuff down in the notebook. It was horrifically tedious. I don't know why I did that. Um, and at that time, like I didn't realize that that was a thing that people got paid due to like design
Okay.
gameplay systems and units and stuff. I just figured it was like, the artists make an art thing and the programmers make programming thing, and then you have a video game. And it never occurred to me until years later. It's like, wow, people get paid to do that thing. Um,
Yeah. The different pieces.
Alongside that, yeah. Alongside that, I also started moving up my experience around writing was not particularly creative oriented. I have a strong mind for systems and stuff, so like a lot of the technical side of writing always came kind of grammar, spelling, all that stuff was just like this is just how the thing works. Um, but my big interest at the time was physics, mathematics, sciences. So a lot of the stuff that I wrote and a lot of stuff that I read was primarily like high level communication of high level concepts
Concepts.
to
Yeah, that's awesome.
like a seventh grade or whatever wherever I was at that point. And it was a lot of my writing style and the way that I kind of the way that I put together information on paper stems from that kind of writing where it's really complex stuff analogized into something that's easily consumable by people who don't really understand the full context of what you're talking about.
Huh.
Um, yeah.
I got a
So
little question on that.
go for
It's a
it.
little segue just about it. Like, have you done any like legit like teaching before? Right? Like, I know you do it in the form like by simplifying it, but I always wonder, like
I haven't
the,
done
the
so
personality almost seems like you could.
I've been one of the things I keep like thinking like I should probably do this at some point is like tutoring because it's something that I've done for people. I've never done it for pay. It's never every time it's always like somebody comes up to me like, "Hey, this thing's complicated." Like, "Okay, let's sit down. We're gonna learn you some Python. We're gonna learn you some C++. We're gonna talk about this math thing." Um, I enjoy doing it, and every time it like after I do it, I'm
You're
always
like,
like,
huh.
"I get paid for this," and then I don't do it. It's
Yeah,
terrible
I
habit.
know that feeling.
Um,
But I'll let you continue the story. Sorry, I just had to
yeah.
interject.
So yeah, it's a lot of my writing expertise kind of or my writing experience came out of that. And then there's a couple of like here and there. I remember in like oh god, this was seventh grade. I for like an English class, it was like, yeah, write a short story. So I at that point was already playing a little bit of Brood War, primarily use map settings games. And one of the games in that that I tried to hunt down every time I had the opportunity to was the StarCraft One version of The Thing, because I didn't realize that was based on a movie. I was like, this is such an interesting thing. Wow, crazy. And then like, so the short story I wrote for that was how did that like what's the start of that game? Like how does the thing show up? And I like wrote like a 3-page like short story of like the battle cruisers like descending to the planet and then like
Oh,
the
that's
all the raids
awesome.
are getting off and like doing the exploration in the jungle or whatever. But one of the first like creative writings I ever done is another thing that I'm almost certain I have in a box somewhere and I just haven't seen it in like 13 years. I'm curious to go back and see how bad it was.
You
But like
have
all that
to.
to say, like I got a little bit of smattering of everything, but the majority of my writing and writing style is always aimed towards talking about really wacky, complicated stuff in an easily understood manner, oversimplifying to a point, but not to the point where people start getting like confused. They want to dive too deep.
Yeah,
Um,
that's a really I'd say crazy skill to have. Like, and not everybody has it, right? Some people
I'm
have a good way of making simple things incredibly complex. Like I do that sometimes, you know.
it's another one of those things. This is a running theme in my life is realizing that the stuff that I'm good at is stuff that other people aren't good at, and it's weird to me every time.
Yeah, I think we do get caught up in that, right? And assume, but yeah, just by going through that and maybe even hearing or seeing people's reactions to it, like, oh my god, I get it now, and that makes that realization, like, okay, good, then I am good at this thing, and I guess there is a need for this, so that's pretty awesome.
Mhm.
Word. So, as far I don't know if I interrupted you again, as
Nah,
far as the
I mean,
story,
is getting into the that kind of catches us up to
because I
the
would
to like
love for you to describe the path that led you to SunSpear. Like,
yeah.
this
So
whole
that
thing about
fishtails directly into that.
yeah,
So fast forward to 2012, late 2012. Um, that is when I first ran into Dylan Kahn, because he wrote a bunch of essays on Team Liquid and on the BattleNet forums when those were still like a thing that people engaged with, um, about the identity of the different races in StarCraft 2. Um, and having come from Brood War and going into StarCraft 2, I was, as soon as that game launched, I had the beta key from GameStop, plugged that shit in. And like it never quite clicked for me the same way that the sequel did. And there, Wings of Liberty and Heart of the Swarm had like they had some
yeah,
issues. They mostly ironed out at this point.
yeah,
But at the time, like there was a very different feel playing StarCraft 2 Zerg versus playing StarCraft 1 Zerg, and I couldn't put my finger
definitely,
on what it was. And he wrote out these 3 articles. I think it was Protoss first, then Zerg, then Terran, talking about like these things feel really different, and here's why I think they feel really different. And I'm like, that makes total sense. And
wow,
I reached out to him, and I believe he'd already been in contact with Coulter for a little while as well, our director of game. And I was like, hey, this is really cool. I have some skills that I definitely didn't have, that could be a huge help to this project. And I got on and I realized that the skills that I thought I had weren't the skills that I thought I had. And that's when I realized, hey, wait a second, like the designing like units and buildings thing, that's actually a skill set that people like utilize. and I started being able to really flex those muscles. This was like my, I think this was right before. I think it was like right at the start of my senior year of high school. Um,
Okay. So I guess to
this
give
was
people a
the
brief little like idea of the timeline, like when, well, around what time was this at?
this
Like
was
how many years ago?
2012, so almost exactly 10 years ago.
Wow. Okay.
Um,
Cool.
yeah. Um,
Dang.
Yeah, you had said earlier that Donovan was a recent pickup. Donovan was one of the first. He was there when it was written very
Yeah.
early.
Oh.
I was in contact with Coulter and Dylan before they had ever reached out to Travis. We only reached out to him a few like 6 or so months after our mod project, which was one goal. Anybody who ever like knows the deep StarCraft lore, that was around for a little while. We did was just kind of experimenting with the stuff that Dylan was talking about. Of like, okay, could get that like feel the identity of like the StarCraft one races into StarCraft 2 without changing like the fundamental stuff, because a lot of that's
Yeah.
like 12 unit selection, economy stuff, like that's
Quality of life is a
yeah,
big
yeah.
one.
And a lot of that's like that's deep stuff. We don't want to like disrupt that because there's a lot of positives that came out of that. But can we get closer to what it used to be? And we were messing around with that, and I think we did a few things that were pretty good, and a lot of things that were very silly. The first unit we designed was like, hey, Reaper like or Reaver drop micro is really cool. What if we just made the Scout a Reaver but flying, and it was purple?
Yeah. But it's the idea, right? You don't know
Yeah,
how it's going
yeah.
to be until you try it.
Um, and that kind of like kicked us towards that started kicking us a little bit doing design stuff, kind of experimenting. Reached out to Starbow. We did a little bit of interplay there. And eventually what ended up happening is that I ended up going off to university, and I was kind of like ancillary on the side, keeping throwing in some ideas, but more or less at that point, Travis and Dylan and Coulter were like doing more like core design, fundamental overhaul stuff, and I was just popping in and out every so often.
Yeah.
Um, but I means that whenever SunSpear was founded and whenever stuff like really started like kicking off, I was one of the people on the short list. Hey, this stuff is happening. It's pretty cool, and I was like, that's great. Uh,
Yeah. Wow.
so years later, the effectively what we ended up coming up with is okay. So plan was always I want to come back and do work with this group because it's fun. Um, but I also want to do university. And originally, I
Yeah.
went in for a physics degree,
Oh wow. So
which is I still enjoy physics very much. There was some stuff going on. I just totally wasn't able to concentrate. And I ended up switching over into game design because that's when I was realizing, oh yeah, people do in fact get paid for this. I should just like do that.
yeah. Right?
And yeah, it turns out, and the idea was okay, let him do the university thing. I was on as a contractor for a very long time, and eventually, part of the university program that I was a part of, one of the requirements was you had to do an internship with somebody far away from the university. Yeah, you see where this is going.
I'm picking up. Yep, I'm following. I'm following.
So I reach out and I'm like, hey, I have to do an internship, and they're like, yeah, that's great. You can do an internship with us. So I made my way up to Oregon for like a little 6-month stint where I effectively took control of half of our back end systems and became the CEO. And then
Nice.
and
He's like
I
laughing because it's true. It's funny because it's true.
and I skedoodled back down to Texas to finish things off for another big year and a half ish. And now I'm back. All told, right, it was a big in and out journey, but I've been, like Big Jon said, I've been around to some extent
Yeah.
for like a decade.
That's amazing, yo. Like I never knew that, right? So to hear that history is so cool, and the way that everything kind of comes full circle is great. And even what you said something important. Like I want to just work with these guys. Like this is like a team that I don't even care what it is that we're doing. This is what I want to. These are the people that I want to surround myself with. So
Pretty much, yeah. I guess Coulter, Travis, and Dylan are just super great people. They're fun to talk with, and I talk with all of them all the time, just because.
just because, right? Yeah.
Technically, I shouldn't be doing as much design as I'm doing because I'm creative directoring, but like half of my time is spent talking, like forcing Travis into Zion Land because there's stuff I want to figure out.
Yeah, and I mean, even with a lot of the stuff, like with say community and like realizing that marketing is so interwoven, right? Like it's stuff like that it just works the way that it works is if it's natural and it feels like it's right, then you shouldn't push against it, right? You should embrace it. So and the fact that you
Yep,
guys already have that chemistry, right? It just makes it natural. So
it's so nice.
oh, yeah, because I mean that's not true for everywhere,
I
Um,
got a lot of people whenever I say like, "Oh man, it's so cool how you get doing how do you like get into a like design position? What do you do?" I'm like, well, step one is you be really lucky and be angry at a video game 10 years ago, and just kind of like see where it takes you. You
it's,
know?
what do I not want that to be, right? So, oh wow. So, I mean, I guess that kind of leads into something that I did want to ask, which is, when you did, uh, start really working with them, right, and noticing just the world, right, that was being built in Immortal. Was there anything specific about it? I know Dylan is very good at explaining
Yeah,
like and
yeah.
making things very interesting. But was there anything that just was like, oh, these are the cool people that I want to work with, but wow, the thing that you're working on is okay. This is pretty cool.
So Dylan and I we've known each other for many years and been good friends. And a lot of I always knew that like Dylan was a pretty like in-depth world building kind of dude. We've talked about a whole bunch of ideas and stuff that we've had. And when I once we like started moving into this particular project, I'm like, okay, so we're gonna have lore. I know we're gonna have lore. It's gonna be interesting lore. And the one of the things that I was pleasantly surprised on is when I came on, a lot of this stuff already had a lot of those kind of foundations laid in. Dylan's talked about it plenty of times, plate tectonics and like general systems around the like the magic system and the but the thing that really stuck out to me as an opportunity for me to really contribute to the space is that there was a huge wide open space and encouragement towards in-depth development of like high level system stuff. One of the things that we really want to emphasize as part of creation is the world runs on rules, and those rules don't necessarily need to be like clear to the people reading or even to the people in the world, but like the reason that stuff happens is because of the way that the world is set up.
Hmm.
My Because of my history in like technical writing and physics and mathematics and stuff, very sparse history with those two, um, because of my history with those kinds of things, my brain is pretty much wired to think in terms of, okay, this is like the rules of the thing. What happens when you push the ball down the hill with those rules?
Hmm.
Um, and one of the jokes I was making around the time when I switched that from physics to game design, it's like, with game design, it's like it tickles the stitch. It's just that I get to come up with the rules instead of having to learn them,
Yeah, yeah, live
which
by
is
the yeah.
which is true to an extent with game design, but it is literally true with like creative world building for me. It's like a huge chunk of my time, not just like work time, just spare time as well. It's like, how does this specific thing work? What's the math on this? I like dig in.
That is.
I've the spreadsheet work that I've done on
Oh,
how the behemoth functions specifically is large and very entertaining. I learned a lot putting that together.
just like the behemoth itself. Hey, yeah. Wow. Yeah, I think okay, so I don't think a lot of people understand or even know just how much work goes into that, but man, oh man, right? How I'd like to even ask you how you make the rules, right? And then like what are these challenges that present themselves? Do you bend rules sometimes in order to make things work, or do you tend to do it the other way where it's like, no, I've set these rules and let's find the challenge in working within them and still making it make sense, like something like
Yeah.
that.
So we've I've spoken a little bit about this in the Discord before. I really just need to like fucking like put this on a sticky note somewhere because I come back to this so often, especially when people are asking me pretty much the exact same question. How do you guys do this? What's the approach to get like a coherent world that also has like neat stuff in it? And the way that we kind of go about it is kind of is setting the goal and then working up to that point. And there's kind of a like an expansion and a contraction of scale depending on what you're working on. So, as an example, um, we want to have X thing. Let's say it's cool floating angel things as a
Okay, sure.
military. This is the thing that we want to have. Okay, so we know some stuff about how the world works already. We've got these pieces in place. We've got these like kind of broad systems. We know broadly, like, okay, souls are a thing in the universe. Magic is a thing. We have these gods are a thing. How do we take the existing components and like
Mhm.
spin them around to get the goal of what we're shooting for?
Okay.
And the key to this is having broad goals, because what that allows us to do is as we're kind of filling in, like we want an angel like kind of thing happening. um what does it actually look like? What is it? What are the nuances to this thing? Well, here's how angels can work, but here are the rules that are in place, and here are the knock-on effects of, okay, if you have angels in the world, well, they have to have like some source of energy somewhere to like
Yeah.
sustain themselves, because infinite energy is just a rule that
It's just not a good.
we don't do that.
Yeah.
So okay, where do they get their energy from? Well, we can have we have souls. Everything has a soul. They what if they have to? What if the reason that they're like constructing these big empires? Well, they need to be able to sustain themselves. Um, Humans or any mortal, anything soul has the ability to like do prayers or rituals to offer up parts of their own soul to let the angels feed. That is an interesting
Oh.
knock-on effect of just like, well, we already have these mechanics in place. So what happens when you again push that like rock down the hill?
Yeah, there's
What
so many things
starts
that could come
happening?
from, yeah, from that. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, building like interconnecting systems and the implications that come from those systems is after you have like enough of a baseline is when you can really start going ham with the world building. And I think it's one of the things that this particular project, I came in like right at the right time, because a lot of that like fundamental stuff was mostly locked
Set,
into yeah,
yeah.
we had our planets, we had our like broad stroke stuff. So then I get to come in here and be like, okay, we have this thing and this thing and this thing. They're kind of like in a whole bunch of different spots.
The playground and nobody's playing on it, and you're like, yes, the slide's open.
If
Oh, the swings are
Yeah,
open.
exactly. If I do this, how do these things interlink? Okay, this connects to this to that to that to that. Done. Okay, how does that link over to this thing over here? And a huge part of what I tend to do is like taking some of these disparate parts and like unifying them. And one of the things that you asked, like, do you bend or break some of those rules? Um, as little as physically possible. And the good thing is that because we kind of started with broad goals and broad systems,
Mhm.
as I'm kind of diving into how this stuff works, it's really, really easy for me to be like, okay, I know how this thing works, and I know that we want it to do that thing. These
Yeah.
already don't contradict, but how do they link up specifically? And then, okay, now that I know that, I can take those principles and how those rules work there and start pushing them off to other places. So there's very little bending that has to be done in order to actually do the thing that we're
Yeah.
shooting for, right?
As long as you have that system, right, where you start, uh, okay,
Yep,
right, this is what I have. This is how this works. Let's do something fun with it, or exciting, or just that's where the creative like comes in. That's the possibilities are endless as long as the bubble, or at least the sandbox is big enough, right? Like you're not
pretty much, yeah. And
constricted
yeah,
from the start.
and now that we've hit that like precipice of sandbox is giganto, I can just like I can go to anchor the sandbox, be like, this is a thing I can like pull over here a little bit.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting, man. Dang. And so I guess, yeah, you were mentioning, of course, Dylan, right? Is like the master of the world building, and say Immortal specifically, and just the way that his brain works, right? Like, um, what is it like working with Dylan? What?
Uh, Dylan is an incredibly interesting person. He has an insane mind for pulling together history. If I believe his formal education is something in the realm of like medieval history or something, which
Yeah.
shines through in a lot of the stuff that he puts together. And he has this just insane brain for putting together like, okay, we have all of these like interlocking like systems and societies, and these things have to interplay in these particular ways. And when I one of the few things one of the things that he's strongest in is like putting together these big histories. I remember I came up for 4th of July last year. I think it was last year, might have been the year before that. um, I came up, flew into to Montana to meet up with Dylan, and we like road tripped over to Oregon to hang out with everyone else. And the my brain just broke. Sorry. On the trip,
Yeah.
we were like, okay, we have like 12 hours or something. Let's just talk about stuff. And like 4 hours of the trip was just like, okay, Dylan, what's the lore that nobody knows yet? And he just went into this like crazy deep history stuff that like nobody's talked about, all these like ancient civilizations I'd never heard of. And at that point I already knew, I thought I knew almost everything there was with like the lore around these different things. Like I didn't know how deep that well was.
How it
And
goes, yeah.
it's a lot of what it is now is me like finding out more, like just like spelunking into that cave, just like finding stuff and like pulling it out into the light and like writing it down because
Yeah,
there's so much
so
stuff
much
there, and I
that.
want.
Oh wow! So you guys kind of are like a little dynamic duo, and in the sense of like division, right? So
Was this our car trip, Donovan?
Yeah,
You're
yeah.
talking about? Okay,
oh,
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, Big John knows what's up.
Yeah, we were in Dylan and I were in Montana hanging out, and then uh, Donovan came up, and then we took a road trip back from Montana to Oregon, and it was good. I've had some people, by the way, in the chat ask what I'm working on, and I'm gonna try and segue this a little bit into kind of what we're talking about. Um, right now, I part of what my job is as creative is so I help Donovan out with world building, and Dylan, Donovan, and I work together to kind of realize the universe of Immortal in so many ways, and then have that be expanded upon by our amazing art team, and it translates into gameplay. And but we part of our design philosophy for getting the world building for Immortal is we want to have a very strong and broad foundation with deep roots. And speaking of deep roots, uh, we there are some civilizations that have been around in the various worlds of Immortal for a very long time. Um, and I won't go too deep into it, but we this is some pre-concept kind of concept work that I do for uh, beings and people that may you may not see in the game directly. Um, and these are more things that exist in the universe of Immortal, um, and will influence designs that come later, which will then show up in units that you see in the game, or ancient ruins that you see on maps and stuff.
Maps, yeah.
Yeah. It is not Yule. Um, this is a we've mentioned the Dwarm briefly uh, before. These are basically these deep dwelling um, civilization that were a progenitor to the rune. They kind of have knowledge of the runes and of the magics that are available on Shale. Um, so anyway, segueing from that into kind of what we're talking about, one of the things about working with Donovan and um, Dylan in getting this world building stuff, as part of Donovan's job, we had a talk the other day about um, the metaphysics of Immortal, and there's so much work and foundational layout that goes into that. And part of what my job is, I feel very fortunate and lucky that I get to do kind of some of the visual element of it. And it's really fun to work with Donovan on figuring out visually what might this kind of have looked like, and according
Yeah.
to these rules that we've set, what does a carbon based uh life form that has a crystal beard look like? What is that? So it's it's a really fun explorative part of the job.
Oh man, that's so sick. I love that. Like that's a team right there. That is a, I was like an A team right there, right? Like You get the person that builds the world, you know, makes the world make sense, and then really bringing it to life. And I think that's like one of the big things that draw a huge chunk of fans of Immortal. Just the fact that it's not just a game, right? It does have a very well thought out system, right, of just how the world is, in the way that geez, even we're not even talking about the specific characters yet, right? You know, just the function of the world. And then yeah, I think that's a really really cool thing that we're very fortunate. So yeah, I'm this is just me fanboying and thanking both of y'all, right? Obviously Dylan's not here, but it's really really cool. And I think it's quite rare, right, to have that level. So
Yeah.
keep at it, you know, keep on keeping on, and I'm
Thank you
sure a
very
lot of
much.
people do appreciate that. Yeah.
There's a thing, I cannot remember who said it. I'm pretty sure it's been said by a bunch of people. Always stuck with me that uh, one of the most important characters in a story is the world itself. Like treating that as a character in its own right is it gives things so much more texture. Uh,
Yes.
as a more recent example, one of the Batman came out like a few months ago or whatever. And one of the things that was very consistent about people talking about praising the movie was like that the like Gotham felt like it's like a real part of the world, like it's like its own character.
Hmm.
And like really helped make the movie feel like its own place.
Yeah.
And like it's no, it's true. The world is a character, and as any good character does, it influences all the characters that touch it. It's that,
Indeed.
you know, all the characters touch the world.
And then it's the consistency, right? And everything just meshes together, and yeah, like you say, influences each other, right? And makes it believable, right? Like as a something that you don't have to suspend disbelief to actually immerse yourself in, right? Even
Yeah,
as a viewer. So if the world can do it like that, then the viewer has that opportunity to really get into it too. And I guess in our case would be both the player or just the consumer of um, stories or maybe movies, right? If we do,
fingers
but and I
crossed.
guess that kind of like goes into something that I do ask, right? How do you kind of like decide on which things to explore and build upon, whether it's storyline or facets of the world that you're like, you know, this either doesn't make sense or can make a little bit more sense, right? Do you? Let's say
Yeah.
yeah, let's just
So
ask. Is it better?
there's kind of three angles on that.
Okay.
So the first angle is like, okay, we are making a video game. So what does the video game need like right now? Like what
Sure.
when we're as I think it's not breaking anything to say at some point in the future we will be working on Jorah. So as part of that, like making sure that we have good preparation on the history around Jorah and the characters that are like that the art team and the design team are going to need to be interacting with, making sure that there's a good foundation for that. That was a top priority for a little while, just to make sure that that's set out and ready to go, and we can just kind of hand it off to the other people who are going to need the context. And then that allows us to start shifting towards, you know, the needs of the game are our top priority. So that's focus number one.
Yeah.
uh, Focus number two is making sure that we build out that runway and make sure that we have that level of consistency.
Okay.
One of the things, a lot of that is trying to think of a good analogy. I'm going to use this one. It's not the best analogy. It's kind of like as we are developing stuff, because there's a whole bunch of stuff that is being worked on and kind of in parallel. Okay, so somebody has a question on this particular thing. I don't have an answer for that, and I
Okay,
can't
that's
find
good.
it written down in any of the ungodly documents we have. What's the answer on this? I get with Dylan. We have an X number of minute conversation. Like, okay, with all of these things in place, what are the goals we want to have in the long term that these answers need to make sure to accommodate for? So, as an example, talking about the we had a conversation a couple days ago about like what's the actual like size of gates, because
Oh,
we have like a number like floating around internally that's been talked about, but we've never like sat down and thought about like what's the actual range for these things. So we sat down
sure.
and like, okay, well, grandiosity is super important, right? These are a huge focal point of the game, not just the game but the IP, right? It's one of the things that makes the world stand out and
Listen,
function. You can't
yeah,
have Aru meet Karath without
without
a gate to get them to each other,
together.
you know.
Yeah, truth.
So it was like, okay, they need to be really big, but like, what's the upper limit? Like, what's the reasonable upper limit? Because if we just want to say big, we could say it's 27 kilometers and like be done with it. But
We wanted to,
is
yeah, we want to
yeah, like
settle.
what's the upper lower limit? One of the things that came up was, okay, so these gates ideally need to be able to link with each other. So there is like some level of constraint on like gates can only be so big or so small, because after a certain point, it becomes really difficult to link up your like 500-meter gate with the 1300-meter gate because they're different portal sizes, right? How does
Uh-huh.
that work? Like, does
Where
that
they
mean
come
that
out
one
from?
gate
It's
can't link to?
like,
Yeah. How was the interplay of that? So we had a huge long conversation about that, and we ended up settling on a particular range of gate sizes that meet the grandiosity requirement, both for this project and for stuff moving forward, because we want to make sure future people have the opportunity, comics or movies or whatever things we're able to expand into, have the opportunity to have these really cool cinematic like shots or panels where they can really accentuate the grandiosity of the gates. That's an important requirement. That's not just like an in the world thing. We want to make sure we hit the extend that runway all the way forward, right? So that's like the second angle, is making sure
yeah.
answers for now and also answers for moving forward. And the third one is, man, that'd be really interesting. I'm going to waste some time on this and just like
Just to see
go
what
ham on it. You
happens.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, oh man, that's awesome. Jeez, man, I'm just getting my mind blown right now just how much goes into this, yeah. So I do want to remind people though that we are doing a giveaway, yo. So if you do type exclamation raffle, you will be joining that giveaway. But man, yeah, let's jump back into this because there's so much. I feel like we could do this forever, right?
I literally can. We have so many documents, and
So,
that's just like public stuff.
oh man. So I'm glad that we at least were able to explore, right, that process and let people understand just what it means, right? So oh guys, I'm sorry too. I wanted to clarify that the giveaway is for the alpha keys to play the game. So exclamation raffle is for specifically the alpha key in order to jump into this wonderful game of Immortal. All right. So I oh man, I wish I could stick just keep going with this part this topic, but I did
Come
want
visit, get a
to.
beer. We'll keep going.
Oh yeah, I think that'd be an awesome conversation, right? Just to chill and talk. Uh, so I did want to at least let you have an opportunity to showcase a bit of the TTRPG, or at least like your um at least experience in creating TTRPG, and what kind of what is your history with so for those that don't know what TTRPG is, tabletop RPGs, right? Another thing that Donovan had been at least working on. I know the team had been working on it. So I wanted to pick his brain. I want to pick your brain, Donovan, and then at least go through that process of the difference between this technical writing and making this world make sense versus actually creating a system, another like different kind of system, which would be say a game system for tabletop.
Yeah. So this is something of a sidebar to the general journey that got me over to Immortal. Around the same time that I met up with Dylan and everybody else, it was like the year before that or something. I ended up finding a friend of mine in high school was like, "Hey, you're a nerd. Do the dice thing," and I'm like, "Okay, let's try it out." So he, we got together. We did a little short campaign in a system in a game system called Savage Worlds, and this just clicked for me. All of the things I'm talking about, technical writing, rules, getting like ecosystem of rules put together to tell an interesting story. All of that just works.
Awesome.
And this system in particular, there's a lot of like interesting like small things. I'm not going to get too deep into it because I will go on for too long.
Yeah.
But like the way that the mechanics of this particular system function help to kind of it's it allows for very deep like math engagement calculations in terms of like the design side of things, but the mechanics are also intrinsically obfuscating on the player's side, so that when you're when you're designing it, right? I can go in, I can do all the numbers, I can do all the statistics. It's not super easy. I've spent a long time figuring those things out.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, when you're actually just playing it, you don't need to know any of that. It's just kind of a simple like rating system of, okay, am I like somewhere between below average to really, really good? If I'm really, really good, then you just think about like the narrative context of how difficult does it seem like this thing would be for somebody who would be really good at it.
Gotcha.
Maybe I should try. And that's all you have to think of on the player side.
Okay.
And yeah, as long as you have somebody who knows the rules well enough, all that stuff can be translated into mechanics like that, and then it just runs. So that system in particular just like is
That's the
perfect for me,
one.
and
Yeah.
it's just it was like just immediately fell in love with it, and it's they've had a new edition. We've got a whole bunch of new source books, and I've spent a whole bunch of time. One of the things I ended up diving into early on in that community was looking at movies and narratives and figuring out, okay, if X movie is in this system, what does that look like? It's not a class based system, so I actually have to like figure out, okay, what are they actually good at? What are the specific feats they have? What are the skills they have? And I ended up putting together a little like blog in like 2014 or something of like, hey, here's X character in the system, and I ran that for like 2 or 3 years. It got
Yeah.
popular. People were talking about it, and ended up pushing me into a into a higher position in the community, which gives me more
Yeah.
eyeballs
Like
on.
respect, and it's like, okay, this guy kind of knows. Like it makes sense.
Yeah.
Like
And
it's
then
fun.
at some point along the line, one of somebody reached out to me, like, "Hey, there's this Discord thing that people are like jumping onto. We should like do a Discord server." So now I'm also the owner of like the biggest Discord server for the system, like 3,000
Wow.
people or something. Yeah, it's just
Damn.
a thing that I
Okay.
have on the side.
Wow. A little like humble flex, you know.
And then on top of that, they opened up a program for like just publishing rules to just like get just like if you're a content creator for that system, you can get like 60% or something if you like publish it through this little platform, and all the
Yeah.
licensing stuff's taken care of, whatever. And I put out like 2 or 3 like little 3 to 5 page like, hey, here's a specific system that could use a little more depth. We'll talk about money stuff and ways, and that ended up being I think it was one of the like top 10 releases of the first year that it
Yeah.
was
Hell yeah.
that systems or that program was implemented. So I know the system really, really
Something's
well.
working. Yeah, I know. Like something's working, right?
So uh, beginning of I think it was the end of 2020 or like right at the beginning of 21. Dylan like basically I think we were just talking. He's like, you should just like make a thing for this for Immortal, and I was like, yeah, and then we did. Um,
Immediately,
so
right? There was not
yeah,
even a
pretty
question.
much.
Like, yeah.
So we did the little like Jorah one shot. It's like a little like 30-ish page thing. Got like the first half of like some mechanic talking about like, hey, here's runes and here's some new stuff, and we included a little adventure in the back half of that. And after that, uh, at that point, marketing reached out to me like, hey, that was pretty cool. Can you do another one? And I was like, probably.
Yeah.
And I just started working on the one that we're starting to wrap up now, which is instead of focusing on like the Jorah Karath Talmetric side of things, we're switching over to Nuoth, and we're looking at Aru, Iratek,
Yes.
all the other like stuff that's going on Nuoth, and the scope expanded very quickly. It's a very big book. The manuscript is 122 pages. It's being formatted right now.
Oh, okay then. Yeah, I
it's
know. I was gonna
it's
ask
it's a
like,
chunker.
hey, when can we play? But I don't want to put you on the spot like that. But I mean, are we talking soon TM or are we?
Soon TM.
Yes.
Confidently before the end of the year. We'll see exactly how that timeline shapes up, but soon TM.
Oh, so I was gonna ask. So clearly, Savage Worlds is probably your favorite
Oh yeah.
TTRPG, right?
Oh yeah.
So were there any ones along the way, even right, that inspired you to realize what your favorite style was, and then what inspired you to actually
So
do
a
it?
big part of my exploration into the RPG space was a lot of like it was not a ton of playing because it's difficult to get a lot of people to play a new system and also to learn a new system well enough to run a thing in it. What I ended up running into is a lot of systems you kind of have like there's two paradigms in systems. You have the paradigm of uh, broad systems, which are intended to work with a whole bunch of different things. And one of the reasons that I like Savage Worlds so much is because it is literally engineered to just be like, okay, add these two rules, and now you're playing. Now you have the ecosystem to play a more gritty setting or a more high fantasy, like fantastical thing. It's built to and it's engineered to allow you to like move these different pieces around and play in whatever setting you want.
Yeah.
And normally that comes at the cost of mechanical depth. You look at systems like Powered by the Apocalypse systems or like Fate, and those systems are really good, but they're so narrative focused that I don't have a lot of like mechanical crunch to get into,
I
and I
know
lose.
that.
Yeah. And on the flip side, you have systems that start to narrow in on a specific thing that they're trying to do. D&D is really successful, and D&D does one thing really well. It's D&D, and it does it really damn well.
Okay.
But if you start trying to expand outside of that very specific kind of like plot progression,
Like
structure, character progression,
you run into
yeah, it's different. So if
Dungeon
you're going to
World. I
look
remember I
for
played a bit of.
Dungeon World's fun.
Yeah.
The conclusion I ended up running into is Savage was my favorite because it offers both mechanical depth and flexibility kind of in equal terms. And I, just because I'm familiar enough with it, I can just make it do whatever I want.
Yeah.
But the flip side, the thing that I really enjoy is I really like finding smaller games that are hyper focused on one really weird specific thing. Because when you have a very flexible generic system, that by necessity it can't be hyper focused on any one thing.
Right.
So there's a game called what was it called? I always forget the name of the thing. I think it was I think it's called Angry Marines.
What was it?
And I think it's called Angry Marines or something
Okay.
to that extent.
Yeah.
And it is a one-page might be two-page RPG system, and the idea is you're the entire party is just playing Space Marines, but they're not in the middle of a war, and the entire purpose of the game is rolling to not kill everything. Which is
So it's like after
wonderful.
it's just like okay.
Yeah, it's like a peace talks or whatever. Like, how do you not
How do you
screw this
maintain?
up?
Yeah. Oh.
Like I love stuff like that.
That's
There's another
cool. That's
one.
creative. Yeah.
There's another one that's probably more well known called Everyone's John, which is everybody is playing one person. His name is John, but you're playing the different personalities in his head that take over at different points.
Really? Yeah. Damn. Yeah. So there's a lot of
goofy stories that come out of that one.
Oh man. Oh, this so like when you're even thinking about that, right? And thinking about like creative versus fun versus this has to make sense, right?
Mhm.
What do you prioritize, or is it just trifecta of finding the right balance of it? Or I guess what you've been saying now is certain things do things very well, right? And they stick to them and they know. Other things are more narrative driven, so maybe their systems aren't as refined, right? Judging just from
Yeah, it's
this
like
interview, you love the technical side of things. What do you? I'm gonna ask you personally, like value the most.
so the way, and this kind of like folds into just how I like do my job at creative in general. The thing that I appreciate the most, and the thing that I'm really good at when I run games, I'm not very good at crafting stories. I've never been good at crafting stories. The thing I've always been really strong at is constructing that sandbox, getting those rules in place, and kind of having like a starting point and kind of knowing like, they'll end up in the castle at some point. There's a thing over here they can engage.
The shiny.
But like, what do they actually do? Like, they have enough stuff to engage with. There's enough systems in place, enough like things that they can touch. What does that story look like? I don't know. I'm gonna experience this along with everybody else. I'm just I'm just here to make sure that the world keeps flowing around them, and otherwise, like, we're just gonna let them see what happens. The dice tell their own stories is something that
Yes,
is a phrase that I tend to fall back on, and I almost every like great moment that I've run into has been a combination of having really good players, because I'm very lucky,
Mhm.
who are able to kind of role play into whatever scenario is happening, and then just watching the thing happen, and then kind of coming back to it after the fact and be like, yeah, that makes sense that things happened that way. I'm patting myself on the back for coming up with good systems,
Yes, and encourages
like
it.
yeah, and like I basically just like take my hand off the wheel, and then watching the car drive itself. That's the thing that I love the most when running this kind of stuff.
Oh,
So I just
nice.
I just got to make sure that I write all the rules for the card drive itself good enough, and I just watch it happen.
Oh, that's awesome. So I'm assuming that you are very happy with the way that the Immortal one, like your the Dora one,
I'm
came out, right? Like just the I
it
got a
was
chance to actually watch it, and then you had some awesome characters that are just so fun to watch. As far as like people and personalities, and the fact that they just seem like they were having so much fun,
I love
like
running
so many
the
laughs.
like
I
Harry in particular he's such a funny dude. Boy, he's a good guy. Yeah, like that kind of thing was that's actually the most like engineered, I guess, that I've ever like made a thing. And even then, it was just like, okay, we're gonna like, blah, 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 here's how the world is gonna interact with like is gonna react to if they do XYZ thing, and I just let him
boom,
go.
take your hands off the wheel. Right? And you don't want to, yeah, you don't want to drive it too much. So wow, man, Don, Dr. Boson. I thank you so much for this, Pyreside. I learned so much just even about the process, right? None of us necessarily know everything that goes into it, but you did a really good job, at least, of giving us a glimpse into the world of, your writing and just the what you do on a day to day basis and just how your mind works. So, when I'm sure that a lot of people are excited for, the TTRPG and just how immortal like the world and everything that has to do with it is going to shape, including myself. So, ah,
I'm excited to see stuff start rolling out and people
hell
start
yeah,
engaging with it. It's gonna be great.
man, hell yeah. Oh, I think we're definitely gonna have to have another one of these. Like there's no way this is the last time that we speak in the near future. So, if there's anything else, right? Just quick kind of shout outs, if anything. Perhaps something that you want to hint at, but without giving too much about,
um,
because we.
hmm. Um, so on Nuoth, because of the way things work, occasionally you will have very large pockets of just energy building up over the oceans. You get lots of big storms. Sometimes those big pockets of energy run into big pockets of ether and magic. Those are very large
Hmm.
elementals.
Yes,
I'll leave it at
they
that.
are. Hey, and on that note, there you have it, Donovan Bailey. Uh, Absolute pleasure to have you, man. But there's one last thing that we must do before we do end the stream, and that is going to be giving away these immortal keys. So this is the final chance to enter the raffle. That'll be typing in exclamation raffle in chat, and then we will give away the immortal alpha key so that you guys can play the game. But definitely be on the lookout for not only the TTRPG but even some short stories that we didn't get a chance to really talk too much about. But like I said, if we had 2 days, we probably would have been able to scratch the surface of all the things that we can talk about with Don.
There's a
So
lot. A
yeah,
lot.
oh yeah, oh yeah, I love it. So yeah, big thank you for doing this, man, right? And being so
Absolutely.
excited and passionate
Always,
about it. Like this is awesome.
always love coming to stream. It's always a good time.
Awesome. All right. So Kippy, are we ready? Are we ready to give away these keys? So we're gonna be doing the drawing, right? Drum roll, please. I have a push to talk, so I actually can't do a drum roll. One second. And that's like the sound effect for a new monster that we're going to introduce into a new unit, one of the new, yes. Just gotta, yeah, take the octave and just bring it down a little bit, right? Pitch it down. So here we go. We got Santa Claus, Ontor, the Kobold, and Elastoid. So congratulations on your alpha keys. And
Welcome.
yeah, please enjoy the game more. Share it with your friends, Santi. And yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in to this episode of Pyreside Chat. Our next one will be next month, so stay on the lookout for that. The exact day, I mean, it'll be a month from today. I'll definitely, of course, give y'all all of that information in the Discord, and also we will keep up to date on our social media. So definitely follow Gates of Pyre on Twitter. Join our Discord if you haven't already. And also be on the lookout for the YouTube because there's going to be some updates to that soon as well. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you guys have an awesome rest of the day, rest of the night, depending on what part of the world you live in. And we'll see you on the next one. All right. Take care, everybody.
Thanks, guys.
Adios.